Hello, this is Kelsey from Kels Reads Things at Anna Porter Public Library in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and I am very excited today to be finally discussing with you The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. Now, for those of you who do not know, The Midnight Library is an adult science fiction book that revolves around the life of Nora Seed. It combines themes of quantum physics, science fiction, suicide, self-deprivation, depression, and mental issues, as well as drugs, self-discovery, self-realization, and finally, self-love. Nora Seed's life has been filled with regret and supposed bad decision-making for years, and she's finally at her breaking point. After one too many bad decisions, Nora decides to take her own life, only to end up in the Midnight Library, a sort of in-between state of life and death in her mind. In this library, Nora will discover a multitude of life alternatives that range from Olympic medal swimmer, universal rock star, wife and pub owner in the country, and countless more. Nora is in search of her perfect life possibility. A life where both of her parents are alive and proud of her. A life where she has a relationship with her older brother and she can be happy. Only Nora discovers that no matter what life she decides to live, some choices are just out of her control, particularly those of whom she loves. And not all regrets are ours to hold. With an old friend's guidance, Nora will learn how to love life again and discover that no life is perfect. When the reader is first introduced to Nora Seed, we're introduced to a 35-year-old woman who is miserable beyond belief. After several bouts of bad luck, Nora decides that living life just isn't worth it, and being drowned by your own misery is definitely not worth continuing to try. When Nora ends up in the Midnight Library, in her mind, she is reintroduced to Miss Elms. Miss Elm was a school librarian from her high school days, and she was the one who was a little bit of a support system for Nora, someone that Nora felt like she could open up to and play chess with to kind of bide the time. Miss Elm introduces her to all of the books in the library, which are all of the possible lives Nora can sample from. As I mentioned in the plot, she has the ability to choose being an Olympic medal swimmer, a rock star, a mother, a pub owner. There are all sorts of possibilities, and that's one thing that I loved about this book, is it showed you that the world is full of possibilities. We are full of possibilities and chances and experiences that we're able to have if we just open ourselves up to them and we don't give up on hope. That was something that I really liked about the book specifically, was the highlighting of hope and the fact that you may be miserable at this point in time in your life, but that doesn't mean you're going to be miserable forever. Some other things I liked about the book include Nora Seed herself. I thought that she was extremely relatable. There are very few people that I know of that haven't experienced at least some level of depression, anxiety, or at least regret. And regret is a topic that is highly covered in this book. And thanks to this book, I learned for myself that you can't live in regret. And sometimes the regrets that we have aren't even our own responsibility. So that's something to keep in mind when you're reading this book, and it's something that I felt really enlightened to. I thought the setting of the book was really interesting, especially because I'm a librarian myself, and I love to imagine that in a state between life and death, there's a library. I love the journey that Nora goes on herself. She really discovers who she is, what she wants, and she also learns that, again, not every decision she makes is something that she needs to hold on to, especially when it comes to other people's reactions to said decisions, because you can control yourself, but you can't control other people, and that's one of the hard lessons that Nora really learns while going through this journey. The pacing was exceptional. It was a very short book, but I also felt like I read it within just a few days. It was entertaining, fast-paced, and I just can't recommend it enough for all the messages that are in this book, the very important messages about mental health. Some of the top 3 lessons that I loved from this book included: life is worth living. How people react to your decisions is not your responsibility, nor should it be your burden. And you're not a disappointment to the right people, and you're not a disappointment in general. I also liked the ending. I thought it left the readers on a note of hope and excitement and enthusiasm for where Nora will go next. Now I'd like to just highlight a few of the quotes from this book that I really enjoyed and I felt encompassed the meaning of the book. On page 29, "Between life and death, there is a library," she said, "and within that library the shelves go on forever. Every book provides a chance to try another life that you could have lived, to see how things would be different if you had made other choices." Page 51 on Nora's decision to stay in Bedford, where she was raised. But she knew Bedford was the worst option, and yet she picked it. Because of some strange predictive homesickness that festered alongside a depression that told her ultimately she didn't deserve to be happy. That she had hurt Dan, and that a life of drizzle and depression in her hometown was her punishment, and she hadn't the will or clarity or hell, the energy to do anything. Page 67, discussing regret. "So you see, sometimes regrets aren't based on fact alone." And what was really important about that, I don't want to give anything away, but sometimes we presume things when they happen are our fault, when that's not always the case. And that's another lesson that Nora learns in this book, and I thought that was really important. Page 84, a quote about librarians. "Librarians have knowledge. They guide you to the right books, the right worlds. They find the best places, like soul-enhanced search engines." I bet you can see why I loved that one. Page 126 on a quote about solitude. "She had thought in her nocturnal and suicidal hours that solitude was the problem. But that was because it hadn't been true solitude. The lonely mind in the busy city yearns for connection because it thinks human-to-human connection is the point of everything. But amid pure nature, or the tonic of wilderness, as Thoreau called it, solitude took on a different character. It became in itself a kind of connection, a connection between herself and the world, and between her and herself." That was another big theme in the book, was philosophy, as Nora studied philosophy in undergrad, and it was a big part of her character and who she is. So I loved that philosophy was tied in with the sci-fi themes, as well as a focus on mental health. It was all just really beautifully well done. On page 143, a quote about being free. "She imagined seeing herself as just another brilliant freak of nature. Just another sentient animal trying their best. And in doing so, she imagined what it was like to be free." And finally, a quote on misery and hope. "It was as though she had reached some state of acceptance about life. That if there was a bad experience, there would only be bad experiences. She realized that she hadn't tried to end her life because she was miserable, but because she had managed to convince herself that there was no way out of her misery." Well, we learn that Nora learns there is a way out of her misery, and she takes that opportunity and runs with it. So overall, I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was exceptionally thought-provoking. It was inspiring. It's a book I recommend just about everyone to read, because I believe there are very few people in the world who haven't experienced some level of depression, anxiety, or at least self-doubt. We all experience negative things. We all go through hard times, and I just loved the combination of philosophy, science fiction, and a message of hope and self-love in this book. So overall, I have to give it 5 stars. Thank you so much for watching my book review today, and I look forward to discussing In 5 Years with you very soon. Thank you, and I hope you have a wonderful day.